If you have ever looked at the news and seen the average Australian salary, you probably felt a sudden sharp pinch of anxiety. You see a headline claiming the average worker is earning over $106,000, and you look at your own bank account and wonder where you went wrong. You're working hard, you're hitting your targets, but you aren't anywhere near that six-figure mark. Today, I'm going to let you in on a secret that the headlines never mention. The average Australian salary is a lie. Specifically, it is a $30,000 lie. To understand why, we have to look at the latest 2026 data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. As of early this year, the average weekly ordinary time earnings for a full-time adult in Australia hit $2,051. If you multiply that by 52 weeks, you get roughly $106,652. That is the number politicians and economists love to quote because it makes the country look incredibly prosperous. But there is a massive problem with that figure. It is a mean average. And in a country with high income inequality, the mean is a useless tool for measuring real life. Think of it this way. Imagine you're at a local pub with 9 of your mates. Most of you are earning around $75,000. Then Gina Rinehart walks in and sits at the bar. If you calculate the average wealth in that room, every single person in that pub is now technically a billionaire. But obviously that doesn't help you pay for your next round of drinks. That is exactly what is happening to our national wage data. A small group of surgeons, mining executives, and high-flying CEOs are dragging the average up into the stratosphere, leaving the rest of us feeling like we're failing. This is why we have to look at the median. The median is the true middle of Australia. If you lined up every worker in the country from the lowest paid to the highest paid, the median is the person standing right in the center. According to the latest ABS employee earnings release, the median weekly earnings for all Australian employees is actually closer to $1,425. That works out to about $74,100 a year. Do you see the gap? The difference between the average of $106,000 and the median of $74,000 is more than $30,000. That $30,000 is the statistical noise created by the top end of town. If you're earning $80,000 a year, the headlines tell you you're below average and failing. But the real data shows that you're actually doing better than more than half the country. You aren't behind, you're just being measured against a yardstick that wasn't built for you. Even if we only look at full-time workers to keep the comparison fair, the median is still significantly lower than the average, sitting at roughly $90,532. That means even for the grind culture of 38 to 40 hours a week, the six-figure salary is still not the norm for the majority of Australians in 2026. It is a milestone, not a baseline. But here is the hidden insight that most people miss entirely. When we talk about these numbers, we are almost always talking about gross income, the number before the tax office takes its cut. In 2026, the tax brackets have shifted, and while the Stage 3 tax cuts have provided some relief, the bracket creep is still very real. A person on the average salary of $106,000 is taking home roughly $81,000 after tax and Medicare. Meanwhile, the median worker on $74,000 is taking home about $60,000. When you factor in the 2026 cost of rent, fuel, and groceries, that $21,000 difference in take-home pay is the difference between living comfortably and surviving. This is why the average trap is so dangerous. It creates a psychological benchmark that forces people into lifestyle inflation they can't afford. You see the $106,000 average and you think, I should be able to afford that new Ranger on finance, or I should be able to renovate the kitchen. You're trying to live an average life that actually only belongs to the top 30% of earners. We also need to talk about the regional lie. If you live in Sydney or the ACT, your local middle is much higher. In 2026, the median salary in the ACT remains the highest in the country at over $83,000 because of the concentration of high-level public service roles. If you're in Tasmania or South Australia, that median drops significantly, often hovering closer to $67,000. If you're living in Hobart and comparing yourself to a national average fueled by Sydney bank executives and Perth miners, you are setting yourself up for a lifetime of unnecessary financial stress. The most important part of this data isn't just knowing the numbers, it's knowing how to use them. If you've been feeling behind because you aren't hitting that average six-figure mark, I want you to take a breath. Being at or around the median, that $74,000 to $90,000 range, means you are the backbone of the Australian economy. You are exactly where the majority of your peers are. Here's the move that nobody talks about. Stop measuring your success by your gross salary and start measuring it by your margin. Your margin is what's left over after your median life is paid for. I know plenty of people earning $150,000, well above the average, who have a $0 margin. They are stressed, they are over-leveraged, and they are one interest rate hike away from disaster. I also know people earning $80,000 who have mastered their expenses, invested consistently in low-cost index funds, and have more true wealth than the high earners. In Australia, we have a cultural obsession with the six-figure salary. It's become a shorthand for having made it. But in 2026, $100,000 doesn't buy what it used to in 2020. Inflation has eroded the purchasing power of that milestone. If you hit $100,000 today, you're essentially earning what $82,000 was just a few years ago. The goalposts are moving, which is why the average keeps climbing while your daily life feels roughly the same. And we have to acknowledge the gender gap in these figures. The latest 2026 WGEA data shows the national gender pay gap is still hovering around 11.5% for full-time workers. When you look at the average versus the median, women are often disproportionately represented in the median and lower brackets due to structural issues like part-time work and caregiving responsibilities. For a woman working full-time in 2026, the median is roughly $1,631 a week, compared to $1,841 for men. These aren't just numbers on a page. They represent real-world differences in the ability to save for a home or build a super balance. The reframe is this: stop looking at the average as a target. It's a mathematical quirk caused by the ultra-wealthy. Instead, look at the median to see where you sit relative to your neighbors, and then focus entirely on your own net worth growth. Your net worth, your assets minus your debts, is the only number that actually determines your financial freedom. Your salary is just the fuel you use to build it. If you're earning $75,000 and you're saving 10% of it, you are doing better than an average earner who is spending 110% of their income to look the part. Wealth in Australia isn't about the number on your group certificate at the end of the financial year. It's about the gap you create between what you earn and what you spend. Doing nothing because you feel behind. The average is the most expensive decision you can make. Whether you're earning $50,000 or $150,000, the math of compounding works exactly the same. Time is the one thing that doesn't care about the ABS average. This isn't about settling for less. It's about grounded reality. For the vast majority of people, financial peace doesn't come from hitting a fake average salary. It comes from understanding where you actually stand and making your next move based on the real math, not the headline lie. If you found this useful, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.